Boom! How you doing? How you living? How you being? It's your girl Nani, and I'm coming to you live from the Fit Body Bootcamp HQ with the man himself, Bedros Keuilian, and I have my co-host Jay from the Unbreakables podcast. I got a real treat for you guys today. We're gonna deep dive with Bedros. We're gonna get into it real deep when it comes to his perspective, when it comes to his morals, and when it comes to life lessons. So I'm excited. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you,
Bedros.
Yeah, thank you, Jay.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
So I want to go into your story, and I know everybody knows your story. You know, you come from the immigrant edge. You came from Armenia. You fled over here. But I don't want to dive into the basics. We already know where you're from, right? But what we want to talk about is the real points to it. You flew over here at the age of 5, or was it?
Yeah, at 6 years old. When I got here, I literally turned 6 like the next day.
Awesome. Yeah. So you flew here when you were 6, and I think that the point of you flying here actually molded you to who you are today. Mm-hmm. So your father saved up almost 25,000, what was it?
Rubles.
Rubles.
Which is the Russian money. Yeah.
So he saved up 25,000 rubles. He was a part of the Soviet, and he basically bribed himself to get out of there. Mm-hmm. He made up a story about visiting his sister in Italy. You guys had to take 2 suitcases with you so it doesn't look like you're escaping. And then you ended up going to JFK, flying to LA,
right.
And that's how it started.
Your research.
Definitely, definitely.
Why am I even here right now?
Listen, so that's exactly
the
point.
We're going to go deep, though. We're going to go deep.
That's the point. So I find that inspiring because it kind of goes on to your entrepreneur journey. Yeah. You try to be a DJ. Didn't happen.
Yeah,
Try to have a supplement company. It didn't happen. But it kind of shows the grit with what your dad showed you. So what I would like to know is, would you say that's where your entrepreneur background came from? Because I get it, you know, everybody wants to get out of their situation, but it's that one memory or that one moment that's like, damn, my dad got that drive, man. He saved up everything for us just to get out of here.
You know, that's really good, like, self-awareness on your part, because when you come from a foreign country, in my case, I came from a communist country. We escaped. We couldn't bring all our belongings with us because we had to pretend like we were going on vacation, and then we came to the United States. As you can imagine, you're a foreigner. You don't speak the language. You don't understand the culture. You really don't know your way around. And so, especially in the 80s, there wasn't that many opportunities for an immigrant like there are today. There was still Section 8 housing. There was food stamps. But there wasn't really English as a second language, and let's get you to assimilate. So through the hardships that my dad had, he had multiple side jobs. He was like worked at a pizzeria, was pumping gas.
He got 3 jobs within 4 days.
Yeah,
that's
insane.
Like that's nuts.
Literally the
that's
second
insane.
day he was delivering newspapers. Like we arrived, slept, woke up, and then he was delivering newspapers in the middle of the night. And then within the 4th day he had 3 jobs, and you know, they weren't the funnest jobs. And so when you have a bad taste in your mouth from the jobs that you have and you're being paid cash, small amounts of money, and he was still grateful for it, he kept thinking to himself, like, man, when I get the opportunity, I'm going to open up my own business. Especially coming from a communist country where no one can be entrepreneur, you can't be a free thinker, you can't have your own podcast, any of that stuff, right? And so about 5 years in, he had saved up enough money between my brother's multiple jobs, my sister's multiple jobs, my dad's and my mom's, where he opened up a tiny little tailor shop in Anaheim, and now he can control his own destiny.
Yeah.
And where my entrepreneurial skills came in is they would bring me from school, elementary school, to his little tailor shop, and I would see him wheeling and dealing with his heavy Armenian accent. You know, he would hem your pants, but then when you go to pick up your pants, he'd try and sell you
some
socks.
An add-on, right?
Yeah, right? And this is how he was trying to make money. And so I learned customer service. I learned the opportunity to sell. I also learned what to do when things go wrong, when he screwed up someone's pants and you cut someone's pants too short and you can't really lengthen it anymore.
How to handle those situations.
Yeah, so I realized, well, wait a minute, you know, my dad controls his destiny. I want to be an entrepreneur. Because I don't think entrepreneurship for me was factory installed.
Yeah.
Like Gary Vaynerchuk. I believe like it's factory installed for Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
Like that dude was supposed to be an entrepreneur. For me, I saw that and I saw how much my dad suffered having jobs. And I saw how much he loved having his own business, small business. He still worked his nuts off, but he controlled his destiny. And I said, that's what I want. And since I was raised around that, it just became a natural progression of my entrepreneurial kind of journey.
I love that. And I think that your whole family really defines hard work. You know, your sisters worked at the pizzeria that your dad worked at, your brother worked at a gas station. And for me, that I found most intriguing was your sister used to work there, but it was like a sacrifice. No one gave up, even as hard as it got. The owner of the place would drink her water just to see if it was soda because she didn't want to steal. Your brother got held at gunpoint
twice,
and he still kept going. And your dad kept getting knocked, getting evicted, getting going, and you guys still kept pushing through.
Yeah.
So that really defines you as a person, and I admire it because most people, we were speaking about it. America, I have friends that are African American, I have friends that are Caucasian, I have friends that are Spanish, and they feel like they're owed something, right? They feel like
entitled.
And you mentioned Section 8, you mentioned food stamps, and it's so crazy to me because speaking on this podcast, and Jay knows too with people she's interviewed, I've interviewed so many people that come from third world countries and they've made it happen. So how do you feel about the society now where they say, man, I can't make it in this country. Man, it's hard for me because I'm in Section 8. Man, it's hard for me. I live in the trailer park. It's kind of like, it's
just nothing but excuses at that point.
Yeah.
You guys are touching on such a very important topic right now. And this is going to sound crazy to say, but I believe everyone who was born in this country should have to go live in a third world country and experience what real oppression is.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, we have Trump as a president or Hillary. It doesn't matter who the president is. Half the country's going to hate that person, right?
Absolutely.
That's a given. But when you have a president that no one even got to vote in, they just killed their way into being the president because they killed their opposition. Like, that's what happens in Armenia. Like, even most recently, a couple of years ago, and Armenia has been anti-communist now for almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
But the communist mindset still exists. And so there was going to be an election. And I hear from my dad, I call him once a week, hey, Dad, how's it going? He goes, oh, man, did you hear? Like, some guys went in and killed all the opposition in the Armenian parliament. So the guy who's president gets to be president again. Like, that doesn't happen here.
Right.
And you don't, we have opportunities here and we feel so entitled because this is all we know. It's not the people's fault. We just literally, like, when you're born, you should be able to live till about 14 years old here, and then for 1 year get shipped off to a third world country, experience what it is to run out of running water. So you have to fill up your bathtub because that's all the water you get until tomorrow morning. It's rationed. Run out of electricity. Get mugged on the street. Potholes, you want to talk about potholes? Like, we don't have potholes here. Like, potholes are like little children can fall in and like not come out of. And then when you do, you come back with a new appreciation for your taxes, for the leadership of the country. It's not perfect. We don't have a perfect country, but it's more perfect than any other country out there. Yeah. And what I'm grateful for is that I got to experience that. My dad certainly got to experience that. And I got to experience the hardships here, right? Getting bullied, not speaking English, being called a foreigner, go back to your own effing country. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been called that. My mom and dad have been called that. And as a child, you see that you can't really do anything to protect your parents, but you develop this resiliency and you keep telling yourself one day, right? We always have that, well, one day I'm going to do right by my parents. I'm going to give them the life that they never had. And so that kind of stuck with me, that chip on my shoulder, because, I was the baby of the family.
Yeah.
And so when you see your whole family getting bullied, getting evicted, and you can't do anything about it, the one day conversation begins in your head. And I said, one day my sister's gonna work for me. And today she works for me from her house,
Yeah.
right? One day my parents they're gonna have their own driver, and they do. They've got Hugo, who I pay for Hugo in the vehicle, and Hugo drives them everywhere, and they live in Anaheim. The house is paid for, they go on vacations.
Love that.
And all
It's amazing.
And all this because I suffered in the beginning and I felt adversity. And I think more people need to suffer because through suffering, we develop this resiliency to overcome any kind of adversity we're faced. And a lot of people these days are born into so much comfort that they think the trailer park is tough living. Trailer park is not tough living.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to channel it.
Exactly.
So can you take us back to the time when you moved from Armenia to Santa Ana into a 1-bedroom with 5 of your family members, you being the breadwinner?
Yeah. So speaking of, like, you said, hey, I know blacks, I know Mexicans, right?
Yeah.
So imagine this, in Santa Ana, especially in the 80s, like,
It's
it
bad.
wasn't the Santa Ana of today. And
Yeah.
there's still bad parts of Santa Ana today, but back then, like, it was...
I still live there, so I
Oh,
attest.
okay. All right. So,
I attest.
right?
It's the hood.
And so, back then, Mexican gangs, black gangs, they kind of battle it out. And all of a sudden, the foreigner comes in with the funny haircut and the foreigner family, and, because of Section 8 housing that the government gave us. And all of a sudden, the two gangs, like in our apartment complex, they stopped battling with each other, and they just kept beating me and my brother and my sister up, right? And I'm like, what the hell did we do?
Yeah.
One of the Section 8 housings that we lived in wasn't that first one, but it was just so filthy that I got lice as a kid. But at this point, we were probably a year and a half into being in the United States. I got lice. And my mom and dad, they're working their butt off, many jobs to make ends meet. And they're like, well, we don't want to spend money on buying lice treatment. So my mom had my dad siphon out gasoline from a parked car, and she washed my hair.
Resourceful.
Talk about being resourceful.
She washed my hair with gasoline and killed the lice. Now, if you do that today to your kid, dude, Child Protective Services are taking you away, right? But that's the word, resourceful. So there's resiliency we just talked about, and then there's resourcefulness.
Yeah.
You have to get resourceful in the absence of resources.
Yeah.
Because we can go, well, oh man, the American dream is dead. No, it's not. If you have an iPhone or an Android, you are connected to the world. If you can sell something on social media, you can create a side hustle. Hell, you can go buy a beat-up car and get an Uber or a Lyft job, right?
Yeah.
And so you just have to get resourceful in the absence of resources. And so many people these days are allergic to being resilient and haven't figured out how to be resourceful when they don't have the resource they need. And another great story for you from that time, and it's funny that I talk about this now. Back then, to me, it was like a treasure hunt. So my dad, at the gas station that he worked at, there was a grocery store called Alpha Beta. And Alpha Beta had this dumpster that they would throw food in, food that was expired, maybe had gone bad, right?
Almost owed.
Yeah, and so my dad figured that out, and since I'm the smallest one of the family, it's easy enough for him to lift
Push
me
you
up.
over.
Yeah, so he'd lift me up in there, and he'd go, all right, now get that bag of bread, get the milk, get the eggs, get the lettuce, and a lot of our food would come out of our dumpster. And again, we didn't have the resources to buy the food because that money had to go towards getting our own clean apartment.
Yeah.
So I became the breadwinner, and to me it was a treasure hunt as a kid, but I realized in hindsight now as an adult, that was my dad getting resourceful to feed us.
Yeah.
And if you can just be resilient and resourceful, 99% of your life's needs will be covered.
I love that.
Going back to that point, being 6 years old, going through trash cans looking for food, did you understand what you were doing?
Yeah, 'cause
Like,
you
what
say
was your
breadwinner.
mindset
You
at
say
that
breadwinner.
point?
Yeah.
Did you realize you were a breadwinner
Not
older
then.
or when you were younger when you did that?
Like, did you ever question your parents, like, why do we have to eat this?
Oh, I didn't question. I knew exactly why, because you hear the conversations, and this is funny. I've got two kids now. They're now 14 and 12, but I realize how much our kids listen to us, even when
Without
they're small.
them even, without us realizing
Yes,
it.
exactly. And so parents are talking about like, hey, tomorrow we got to pay either for the water or electricity, but we can't afford both. And as a little kid, I'm like, oh shit, how do we not have water tomorrow, right? My parents have to make a decision between A or B because they can't afford both. And so I knew the situation that we were in, and the truth be told, actually, as a kid, I also had a lot of guilt because I couldn't go get a job. I had a lot of guilt, and I was a mouth to feed, but I couldn't contribute. So I realized that was my way of contributing.
What do you think that taught you, looking back?
Well, again, it taught me work ethic, right? Work ethic has been something I've been taught from the beginning.
It's a non-negotiable.
It's a non-negotiable. I had to do something because I felt guilt. My older brother and sister were crying because my brother.
Slaving, basically.
Yeah,
right?
my brother left his girlfriend, who he swears till this day was going to be his future wife, because he was significantly older. He was 19 when we came here, right? So they would cry at night, and of course I'd walk into their room, hey, what's going on? And they'd wipe their tears and comfort me, but I could hear them through the door that they want to go back to Armenia. They're getting bullied. They're being called foreigners. They're trying to go to college at the time to learn the language, take some free classes. They don't want them in there.
Yeah.
And so I could hear the stress in the family, but it's so difficult to do anything when you're a child.
Yeah.
And so I just kept having those one-day conversations. One day I'm going to work so hard that I'm going to pay for my mom and dad. My sister's going to work for me. And thankfully, the one thing I was able to do that gave me a sense of satisfaction was to dumpster dive. Yeah.
So you talk about feeling guilty, right? And what I want to know is, did you feel like at any point you felt guilty, but then at any point where you're like, man, why did my parents bring me here? Why is this better? I know that in Armenia, you were used to your mom giving you caviar and tea in the morning, and now you're getting gas pouring on your head. People are calling you foreigners.
Dumpster diving.
And you're feeling guilty. Now, I know that in kindergarten, you asked the teacher to go pee, but she didn't understand you, right?
God, yeah.
2 times. And you go ahead and you pee on yourself, piss on yourself, and now you're like, man, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to be here. The next day you go to school, and from there it was like, how can I escape all the time?
Oh my God, yeah.
And for me, I think this is really, deep, is At the age of 6, you ran away from school. You're kind of like in a standoff with your teacher and your mom, and you grab a beer bottle and you put it to your arm. Now, most people bypass that when I've heard your interviews. They didn't really go deep into it. But at that age, you're somewhat suicidal, because for a kid to go ahead and grab a beer can and say, I'm done, I want to run away. Did you also feel kind of like, my parents are doing this to me? Why are they doing this to me?
It was, that standoff was weird. The principal was chasing me. I ran away from school. I mean, I could imagine now as an adult, as a father, like, of course that's what the principal's supposed to do. Like, oh my God, I'm going to lose a child. Like, these parents are going to kill me, right? The cops are going to come. So the principal's chasing me, but I was getting, I would get laughed at every day. I would get bullied every day. I wouldn't fit in. And so it's just like, I need to get out of here. And I knew which way my home was, the apartments that we lived in, and I was going. And apparently they'd called my mom and like, hey, your son's taken off. And I saw my mom coming the other way, and I knew she was going to make me go back to school. And I found that broken glass. It was a beer bottle that was just smashed up, and I took the biggest piece I could, and I held it against my I don't know why I thought it was just going to cut myself. It was obviously, I don't know if I was actually suicidal.
Yeah.
But I was desperate. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go back to school.
Survive or thrive.
Do you think you were like, it was like cry for help at that point?
Absolutely. And it was right after that, ironically, that they found. So you're from here, right?
Yes.
So you know in Glendale, all Armenian, right? In Santa Ana, not so much.
No.
So,
Hispanic culture.
Exactly. So in Glendale, they found a woman who was a teacher who spoke English and Armenian, and she came down and literally sat next to me in school. So I guess it was a cry for help, absolutely.
So she became like your shadow?
Yeah, I guess you can say my tutor. So she would translate everything the teacher's saying.
Oh, wow.
And she was a very nice lady. I completely remember her face now. And my mom still stays in touch with her. She sees her at church every now and again. And the lady asks about me. But the bottom line was, I was desperate. I was crying for help. And I certainly didn't want to cut myself. But I was like, hey, Mom, don't take me back to school or I will. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Bedros, take us back to the time when you were in Armenia. You're roughly between, 6 to 8 years old. And when you wrote a letter to yourself, looking back now, that letter that you wrote to your 6-year-old self, how do you give someone advice that has experienced that same traumatic event? And how can someone overcome that?
Okay. So I was 6 years old when we came to the United States. The event you're talking about happened between the ages of 4 and 6. I was molested by 2 older boys. I was consistently, routinely molested by 2 older boys. And so imagine if I was 4, they were probably 12, 13 years old. And here we are years later. I'm 45 now. At the age of 39, so 6 years ago, this molestation that I carried with me, I never talked to anybody about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm a man. I'm supposed to suck it up. It's embarrassing. And I wasn't able to put these words to it then, but I could put these words to it now. Shame, rage, and confusion. I had shame, so embarrassed that happened to me.
Yeah.
No one can find out, right? Rage, how the hell did this happen to me? Oh my God, I can't believe this happened to me. And then confusion, did I do something to invite those older boys to do that? Am I gay? Am I secretly gay and I don't know it and I'm homophobic? Am I like as a young man you're
all
going
these
through
questions.
Yeah, right? And you're like, what the hell? And as a young guy, you can't figure that out. So what do? You get into more fights, you womanize, you get in trouble with the law. Everything was a byproduct of what happened to me that went unprocessed, undealt with, because there's no way, for example, if you got a cut on your shoulder and I'm your friend, I'm gonna be like, hey, what's up, Nani? And I'm saying hello, but because you haven't taken care of that cut, you haven't treated it, you haven't stitched it up, I go, hey, what's up? You're like, ow, jerk, why did you hurt me?
Yeah.
So people who were friendly to me, I would always be fists up with everyone.
You were defensive.
Yeah, that's it, right? And so because I was molested, and so Kevin, my therapist, said, hey man, now we're gonna rewrite the story. And he gave me the first sentence, and the first sentence was, in Armenia, between the ages of 4 and 6, I was molested by 2 older boys. But today, I'm ... And it took me 2 months to write that letter to my former self. Every time I would start it on my iPhone. And I started crying. I'm like, okay, I can't do it. I would start it on pen and paper. Can't do it. All right, laptop. Can't do it. And then I'd repeat the cycle. Okay, well, let me not do it at home. Let me do it at Starbucks. I would change my environment. And ultimately, stupid, but the year that I finally was, that happened at 39 years old, Christmas was coming.
39, listen to that.
Yeah,
39 years old.
So at this point, I've been married for a good 7 years, 8 years.
Have you had a kid yet by the time?
Yeah, both Chloe
your
and
wife
Andrew.
know at that time?
No. So I carried this weight with me. And I told myself, because I'm very judicial, right? I'm very disciplined. I'm like, all right, dude, you got to write this letter. Because I would go see Kevin once a week, my therapist.
Yeah.
And he goes,
He'd hold you accountable,
yeah,
right?
did you write that letter yet? I'm like, Kevin, I still have that first sentence, but every time I try, I just start pouring and crying, right? Like, I just don't know how. It doesn't want to come out. So I told myself, I said, Bedros, you are not allowed to celebrate Christmas this year until you write that letter, which means Christmas for me is all about my children.
Yeah.
And so I gave myself a deadline. And because of that, I just buckled down and wrote that letter. And it was like 11 pages. And I didn't even reread it. I was afraid to. And I sent it to Kevin. I wrote it on my laptop, and parked in front of a Starbucks, but using their Wi-Fi, but working in my car, right? Because I didn't want someone to look over my shoulder and see the word like molest or
you're
whatever.
like, what?
And plus, seeing a grown-ass man crying. And so I sent it to him. Of course, the next session, I walk in with him, and there it is, 11 pages.
Did he make you read it?
Well, he had highlighted certain areas, and we literally took a 3-week journey over 3 weeks through those pages. And the way he described it to me was this. He goes, the rage, shame, and confusion is like a beach ball that you've been carrying with you. And imagine, so if I give each of you a beach ball, we go in the pool, and the water's this high, and I say, all right, guys, hold the ball under the water. And you do. But sooner or later, you're going to get an itch, your arms are going to get tired, the ball's going to pop up. And that's the rage, right? I would just blow up at my wife. I would blow up at my kids. I would blow up at anyone that was in my way. And he goes, we're going to spend the next few weeks taking the air out of that so that you don't have to muscle your way through what happened to you. And that was such a...
Liberating.
Oh, my God.
So looking back at that, 39 years old, when did you realize that it was I wouldn't say a problem, when did you realize that you needed to face the problem, own your story, own what had happened to you, especially being a man, being as successful as you are, when did you realize, like, it's time? I
wish I can say, Jay, that it was one of those things that I just figured it out. I didn't. I actually went to Kevin, my therapist, and this was four weeks into him working with me about my anxiety attacks. As an entrepreneur who has, an entrepreneur who has a wife and kids, it's kind of hard to juggle all that, right? So I was getting some anxiety about work, and I felt guilty about being at work when the kids and the wife, and then when I'm with the kids and the wife, I'm not present because I'm thinking about work, and so I'm like, I better go see a therapist. So my journey to a therapist was about dealing with anxiety. And here's a great lesson for your audience. He taught me, every time you're dealing with kind of anxiety or stress, halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? If you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, it's going to trigger anxiety. For the alcoholic, it's going to trigger the alcoholic to go back to drinking. The drug addict will drink or use drugs. Sex addict will go back to pornography or whatever. And so, all right, so he taught me halt. And then the other thing he taught me about dealing with my anxieties was that anxiety is anticipation of future pain.
Yeah.
So whatever you're anticipating, deal with it instead of kicking it down the road, right? So 4th session, I'm like, Kevin, shaking his hand, thank you, have a nice day, we're done here. And he goes, Bedros, one thing before you leave. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Your childhood, anything else? I'm like, nope, everything's great, right? Absolute lie.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
It also wasn't a lie. I had buried it so deep inside. And I go, nope. And he goes, are you sure? What about your parents? Like, my parents beat me, but whatever. We're come from a communist country. Like, all kids get beat.
I'll get through that.
Yeah. What happened to me before my parents even beat me was even worse. And then he goes, whoa, what happened? And I just started bawling, right?
Man.
Oh, shit. So for some reason, in 4 weeks, I built enough trust with him to throw him that Easter egg where he was like, wait, what happened?
And it's kind of like you wanted to talk about it because you mentioned it. Oh, what was happened to me was way worse before,
Yeah. And so that's the next 16 months. Here I thought I was going to be done with 4 weeks of therapy. The next 16 months, once a week, every Monday, was spent on dealing with that. And it was the best, in hindsight, it was the best experience ever. People literally would afterwards see me and go, dude, you look younger, you look lighter, you look more bright, this darkness is gone.
The weight off your shoulder, right?
Yeah. What's changed? I'm like, honestly, nothing's changed. But I started realizing that weight, that darkness that I was carrying, that secret, it's gone. I openly talk about it on podcasts, from the stage. Only place I didn't mention it was in my book, and because I didn't want my parents to know about it. They're still alive. I don't want them to feel any guilt about they should have protected me, or they're in their 80s.
Yeah.
What can they do? So.
And I was very impacted by that section because
Absolutely.
2 weeks ago, I get coached by Tim Story. 2 weeks ago, you know,
Tim's a great guy.
Yeah, you speak about blocking it, right?
Yeah.
And I was just speaking to my friend Gladys about it, and I spoke to Jay about it. You know, I blocked out so much things in my childhood because it was such a traumatic thing for me.
Sure.
And you don't realize it until you are becoming more in tune with yourself. And I used to have anxiety attacks. I used to do drugs. I used to drug deal. My story is turning my mess into a mission. And 2 weeks ago, I realized that I was blocking that I was molested. And I was molested by two family members. And as I spoke to Tim about it, just like how you said, you know, he asked me a question. So what's really like the inner problem? And when he asked me that, it just came out. And then your strategy with the shame, confusion, rage, it made me cry on the airplane here because I thought about it. I'm like, wow, I did feel shame for being, feeling like, oh my God, was it me?
Like you were the victim,
Yeah.
but we feel shame.
Exactly. And I was like, man, I can't tell my mom about this. I felt rage. And then when I think about it, that's why I was so aggressive, hands up, fist up to anybody. And
Sure.
I put those walls
point
up.
to prove.
And I really believe in the law of reciprocation. What you give out, you give. So if I'm giving out guards, that's all that's going to come to me. So speaking about silent battles, speaking about molestation, I think that's something very important. And anybody listening to this, you have to face it now because no matter what, it's like a bad, like a small thing where you're like, you know, let me compromise with it. Small things end up becoming big things. And if you keep compromising, it's going to blow up in your face.
Bingo.
And anybody listening to this, at the age of 39 is when he realized this. So for years, he held this in. And the effects were anxiety. The effects were feeling like you just weren't good enough. The effects were I'm feeling like an imposter. So I appreciate you stating that because for me, it helped me hone into the fact that, you know what, I can't have an imposter syndrome. I can't carry this with me till I'm 39 because
Right.
I have a little girl now. I would hate for something like that to happen to me. So I really appreciate that you've shared that and that you spoke about that because it's so important to speak about your silent battles.
Especially your vulnerability. Like looking at you in the sense of, you know, all the successes and your entrepreneurial journey, like people look at you and think that you have it all figured out. But the fact that you're vulnerable about it and voicing your weaknesses and things that you've struggled with, it just shows people like it's okay. It's okay.
And you know what I realized too? Actually, my friend Joe Polish helped me realize this.
Love that guy.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I was speaking at his annual Genius Network event, and right before me, Tony Robbins was up on stage, and he's got the whole audience all worked up.
Worked up.
Right.
It's like a concert
How do you go
over
out
there.
after
I
that?
know. The whole time I'm getting mic'd up while he's on stage, and I'm like, you know, who's going to want to listen to me after Tony, right? And you know, Joe Polish, he has the Genius Network group, and arguably every person in there is either a 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure earner. And my conversation was going to be, my teaching was going to be about leadership, right? And I was prepared to talk about leadership. And so Tony's done, he gets up off stage, and I'm like, oh shit, this is going to be horrible. You know, I'm going to talk about leadership after Tony just worked.
But now they're fired up.
Yeah.
So now
Yeah.
they're like,
You're like,
in
I need
your
something
zone.
good.
In
I
your
need to touch
zone.
their heart.
Like Tony had him here, and watch how quickly I brought him down here, but in a very good way. I got up on stage, and you know, Joe introduces me, and you know, talk about, you know, Bedros wrote a book on leadership, and blah blah blah, etc. And so I get up there, and it just something dawned on me, and I said, hey guys, look, I'm in Joe Polish's 25K group. I've been in this group for 7 years. Many of you are in the group, and so I know you. Some of you are here because you want to see if the group is right for you. But you're either a 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure earner, which means you don't need to learn about leadership.
Right.
You've led enough business to get to where you are, number one. Number two, you can go hire a leader. So I'm not going to talk to you about leadership. I'm going to talk to you about the fact that I was molested. And I believe that many of us in this room use money as to isolate and insulate ourselves from the trauma that we've experienced. And I saw grown-ass men and women literally squirming in their seats in the audience. And there was Dean Graziosi, he's totally fine. Once I finished and I got off stage, he literally crying came to me and hugged me in the green room. And I've known Dean for years.
Yeah.
He never talked about what happened to him as a kid.
Exactly.
Very similar experience. And by the time I got on my flight that night and made it home, I had 8 emails from men in the audience saying, holy cow, you were speaking directly to me. I felt like
just gave me
running
the
out
chills.
I felt like running out the door, but I knew you were speaking to me. And I don't know why my message changed, and I apologized to Joe. I said, Joe, I know I'm supposed to talk about leadership, and I just went down this path of like this is what happened to me. And
But that's demonstrating leadership. You see, our definition of leadership,
Right.
just like I always say it, our definition of influencer, it's changed, right? Someone says influencer, they think social media, they think advertisement, but influencer means to inspire someone to take action. And just like leadership, like you're like, I'm sorry I didn't speak on leadership. You did speak on leadership because being a leader is honing in those silent battles and bringing them to the light and letting them know you're not alone. I always say bosses say go, leaders say let's go. And for me, a leader's in the trenches with you. And for you to share that, that's the perfect example of leadership. You know, you taking in that moment and sharing it with others so they can get in tune to their inner battles, you know?
And actually own it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe like that was a gift that happened to me. And I know when people I say that to, they're like, oh, how can you say that? You were molested. Because now I turned out to be this big commanding guy that has a lot of yeah. And people go, man, well, if it happened to you and you're a big tough guy,
How many other people has it
right?
happened
Like if
to?
you can talk about it, man, maybe I should go deal with it. Maybe I should go deal with my shit. And every day I get messages about people like, dude, thank you so much for being open and honest about it. Hearing it from you, it could happen to anybody. Because it does. The stats are this. 1 out of every 4 men and women are either sexually abused or physically abused.
Yeah, and they're afraid to talk about it because they feel like it's their fault or they're shamed or
Right.
they block it in. I did it for years, and it was so crazy because when I did, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much other stuff that I'm blocking. And to be a leader, I need to be authentic to myself. I can't be an imposter. I can't tell you, hey, face your battles, and then I'm hiding my own shit. Like, who am I to do that to somebody? So I think that's amazing, and I think that's like a big aha moment. Now, you've had a lot of aha moments in your life, and I really enjoyed your story because it's not some bullshit silver spoon story of, you know, I was a good kid and I was perfect and then I became this man. No, it's I used to steal cars. I did a home invasion that went
on a
terribly wrong.
pursuit.
So
Very wrong.
obviously, you
getaway car.
You were not a good thief or a good getaway
Well,
driver.
never use a 79 Toyota pickup as your getaway car. They do
But
not
you're
go fast.
honest about it.
Yeah, and that's what I want to talk about. Your aha moment, right?
Yeah.
Where you go to this home invasion. You guys obviously weren't too good with checking out the scene. Your friends go inside the house. The lady's there, so they get spooked out and run. Thank God they got spooked, and you guys didn't think you guys were some badasses and hurt her or something,
For the
right?
record, no one had a gun.
Yeah, no
There
one
was
had anything.
intention of
Let's make that clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, they ran as soon as they saw her. You're the getaway driver, and when the lady comes up, okay, she points out all 3 of your friends.
Except you.
Except you.
Except me.
And you're like, holy shit, I need to make a change.
Yeah.
What was your thought process in that moment? I know that you're not a big believer of God, but in that moment, were you like, holy shit,
So I was-
someone help me out
The
here.
universe of
Yeah.
some sort.
I was 18 or 19 then, and you know, your parents believe in God, so you do, especially at that point.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, oh my God, this is God helping me right now. Like, this is God putting a fork in my road and saying, the only reason, because once the police helicopter, you know, pinned us down, and then of course the cops came and cornered us at a gas station, we weren't running anywhere. And so they brought the lady, and she was able to point out the 3 guys who were in the house, but she wasn't able to point me out because, well, I wasn't in the house. I was the driver of the getaway car. So, you know, my friends went to jail, and I didn't. And I was like, this is it. God's helping me. I'm turning a corner here, and I cannot, like, look at this in any other way. And so that was a big turning moment for me. And it was then that I decided I'm going to be a personal trainer, like really try to make a career of it. And ironically, as a personal trainer, I wasn't the best. I was a good trainer, but I wasn't great at selling and marketing.
So were you working at Disneyland when this happened?
No.
Okay.
A year and a half after that, I got a job at Disneyland.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And a gay bar too, right?
And a gay bar. Yeah, it was called Oz off of the 5 freeway. Yeah.
Was that in Anaheim? Was
Yeah.
that in Anaheim?
Yeah,
I remember that
Actually,
one.
Buena Park.
That's
So
awesome.
5 freeway where Anaheim and Buena Park meet. And so I was a personal trainer at LA Fitness. I worked at Oz, a gay bar. And I couldn't figure out, so at Disneyland there was a lot of gay cast members that I worked
Yeah.
with. And so one day I was just bitching and complaining about like, man, you know, Christmas is coming and I got all these nieces and nephews I got to buy gifts for. And, you know, between being a personal trainer and working here, I'm still not making enough money. And one guy's, Randy Garnes is his name. Randy goes, well, hey, you know, you work with us here. Why don't you come work at a bar? They actually pay well. It's called Oz. I'm like, really? I go, why do they pay well? He goes, I don't know, but they pay well for bouncers. I found out the second night working there
reason why.
Skinheads come.
Yeah.
Back then, skinheads would come and hang out in the parking lot, and sometimes would try and get in to gay bash. And it was our job to make sure that no one got hurt, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I did not sign up for this. Like, one, there should never be gay bashing, but two, I don't want to get in a fight every freaking night. Like, I don't. So, thankfully, one of my personal training clients, Jim Franco, took me under his wing and taught me how to sell and market, and I could finally quit my 2 side jobs and go all in on fitness, which is the path that I went down. But which kind of speaks to the value of mentors, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's Tim Story or, in my case, a therapist, and Jim Franco and Joe Polish. God knows I've had so many mentors.
And you had an aha moment too when you were working at Disneyland. You had a really shitty manager, and then you had a really great manager.
Kathy and Doug.
Kathy and Doug. And you stated that Kathy was a real bee, that she was unreasonable.
Horrible.
She didn't treat you guys good, but Doug would replicate what a leader should be. He would hop in with you guys. He would help whenever he can. Now,
Nani, he would flip his tie over his shoulder
Yeah.
and get on the grill. I mean, just so you know, Carnation Cafe, which is on Main Street on
Definitely.
Disneyland, that restaurant twice a night would become the busiest restaurant on the planet because
Yeah.
of the Main Street Electrical Parade, and everyone wants to eat there. Tickets are coming out. The guy would just flip his tie over his shoulder and say, "What can I help you with, boys?" And he'd just start flipping burgers and steaks and chicken and putting plates out. And it's like, and then Kathy would just come and stand there with this look on her face, just trying to measure up my sideburns to see if they're too long or not.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously you realize, hey, I will like fight for Doug. And with Kathy, I'll just work at a snail's pace because that's the only way you can get back at her. It wasn't the smartest thing to do, like that was, but that's what I did.
yeah, and I just love that you were thrown into so many diverse situations that make your mind not a biased person, right? Like
Yeah.
you're working at a gay community and like
Two gay
not-
communities.
two gay communities. You're right there in the kitchen and you're
The
looking.
I gotta say, the first week at Oz though, like gay men are very aggressive.
Very.
Yeah,
They'll
they're-
grab your butt even if you don't even want them to.
Yeah, and like I had to make sure word gets out. So I asked the bartender, I'm like, dude, what the fuck? Like, how do I make them stop? They're
You're like, I
"Dude,
need
word has to
security."
get out. Just word has to get out. And then word got out, and they were totally cool about it. But I guess the assumption is, hey, this guy is, says security on his back, and he's working in the gay club. Maybe he's gay.
You literally
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
from the bottom.
But I can
Literally.
appreciate what women have to go through, like
Yeah.
getting groped and all that. Like I
Yeah.
have that appreciation. Yeah, gay guys are aggressive.
That's awesome.
Can you take us back to when you were working at LA Fitness as a personal trainer and you had your undiscovered mentor then,
Yeah,
Jim Franco.
Jim.
And when he gave you that cassette tape,
Yeah.
was that then when he sparked that entrepreneur interest? I mean, aside from your father having the tailor shop, but in the sense where he said, okay, you don't know how to sell. Let me teach you. You exchanged free training, additional training in exchange for mentorship and advice.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So I've always kind of wanted to be an entrepreneur, which is why I tried the whole DJ thing in my at 16, 17 years old. That failed, but I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. But I didn't realize. I just thought, do your craft. I didn't realize you have to market and sell. Right at the end of the day, there's
You
more
have to have
DJs out
skills.
there. There's more personal trainers. There's more gay bars. Like the gay
Absolutely.
club has to market and sell. And so anyway, so Jim's like, man, you're an order taker. You're not a closer. I'm like, what do you mean I'm an order taker? I signed you up for 6 months. He goes, no, I came in here looking for 6 months of personal training, 3 days a week, and you're an order taker. I'm like, oh shit, you're right.
Yeah, you're not
You
a
know?
closer. You're
Change
an
your
order
perspective.
taker.
Yeah,
Right?
I thought I'm the man, but then I realized, I think he's right because I got 2 side jobs, so maybe he's right about this. So I go, well, Jim, what do I do? And I was kind of being like confrontational about it. Like, so you think it's that easy being an entrepreneur? And he's like, well, actually, yeah, it is. And it is factory installed for Jim. Like Gary Vaynerchuk is just factory installed. So he shows up with a Tom Hopkins cassette tape. And I'm like, well, this says real estate sales. It's not for me. And that's how closed-minded I was,
Yeah.
right? And this is a great lesson for your audience. Like, be open-minded.
Man, I just touched on that. You have to be open-minded if you're an
have to be.
entrepreneur.
Like,
because
always show up like as a white belt to everything. Even at
Yes.
45, I show up as a white belt
be a
to
student
everything.
all the
Student,
time.
a life
be a
learner.
student all the time.
So he goes, hey, dummy, every time Tom Hopkins says real estate agent, I want you to hear personal trainer.
trainer.
I'm like, okay. So Tom Hopkins led the Brian Tracy cassette tape. Then he brought me a Zig Ziglar cassette tape. Then he Dan Kennedy book. And before you know it, I'm learning sales, persuasion, marketing, influence. And I'm like, holy crap. And so then the conversation changes to, hey, Jim, I think I'm ready to open up a business. I just need to figure out how to get some money from a bank, like get a loan. He goes, I'll be your partner. I'll loan you the money. You pay me back with 8% interest.
50% of your partnership,
Yeah.
8% interest.
And that's how it starts.
Man, I really, I love that because you talk about several points here. And most people are going to be like, oh, well, hard work. No, hard work beats talent, right? But persistence beats everything. Now, what I
Well
will
said.
say is this is you have to learn hard skills and soft skills. It's not just hard work. It's not just putting in the hours. It's learning skills. And you state that you have to learn sales. You have to learn persuasion. You have to learn marketing.
Yep.
So right now in our society with not even entrepreneurs, because I don't want this to be for entrepreneurs only, just for individuals, right?
Yeah.
Her and I were speaking. What steps would you take as an individual to figuring out what hard skills and what soft skills are going to benefit me? Because most people have, like you said, mentors around you, inside mentors, and we need to hone into them for guidance. Just like most of us have skill sets around us, but we don't want to hone into them. So how can an individual learn their hard or soft skill, or learn that they have to be open-minded with it?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I mean, first of all, you got to realize what is the outcome that I want, right?
Yeah.
So if someone says, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, then you better learn the hard and soft skills required to be an entrepreneur. Someone says, look, I want to be an intrapreneur, and I just coined that term. Intrapreneur is like someone who wants to work for someone else because they don't want to take the big financial risks, but they want to work high up in that position, get six-figure salary. Well,
Like Grant Cardone's guys in a way.
yeah, exactly.
They're
exactly.
entrepreneurs.
Right? And when you look at someone who's an entrepreneur, well, what do you need? You need communication skills. You need to be decisive. You need to be a problem solver. So learn how to do those things before you go into a Grant Cardone or you come to me and go, hey, can I work for you? Because I'm looking for problem solvers.
Yeah.
I've got a giant franchise I'm running here, right? I've got a big team, which means giant franchise, big team, big problems.
Yeah.
Plenty of them. I just need problems solved. So I need someone who is emotionally resilient. There's a soft skill.
Yeah.
That can, do you panic the moment things go wrong, or do you go, are you reactive, or do you step back and respond? All
Yeah.
right, something's going wrong.
Do you fire,
I
do you
get it.
flight?
Right. So if you can work on those soft skills, and it could be anything. If someone says, well, look, I'm going to go tour Europe. There's a lot of soft skills. You got to learn the culture in the different countries you're going to go to,
Yep.
right? How do you greet people? Are you going to offend them if you're there? Like when I went to France, and like an idiot, this was about 15 years ago, I start speaking English and giving them my American credit
Who are
card.
you?
Yeah.
What is this American
They
saying?
were very offended. They were like at a cafe. They were very offended. But I'm like, but I want a French croissant. They're like, no. I was like,
Get out of here.
shit, right? And I meet some American. He goes, you gotta at least make some effort. You gotta bonjour. Just make some effort that you're trying. Like I offended them, and you got to learn those soft skills.
Yeah, and I have a friend that is from Europe, and their culture is completely different. He actually said that the N-word is what you refer to African Americans in that country.
Same
and
in
that,
Armenia.
And
My
that
dad
it's not
still
offensive.
says it. I'm like,
Wow.
Dad, shut up.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
with friends, and he mentions it, and we all kind of like stop.
You're like,
and he's
what?
like, what? Repeats it again, and we're like, not in America. Like, you cannot do that in
We're
America.
so sensitive here. Like in
Yeah.
Armenia, when you would see a black person, and they're typically, and what's really crazy is like black person speaking Armenian or black person speaking Russian,
Yeah.
they would just say the N-word. And it wasn't in a derogatory way.
Yeah.
That's just how it was said. And very quickly, of course, being a child, I learned very quickly, like, hey, that's a no. And
Like,
my dad, being
nope.
old school, I'm like, shut the fuck up, Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we talked about soft and hard skills. There are many people that struggle with finding their passion. And I know you say it's not something you find, it's something that you develop.
Oof.
Can you
Let's
touch
go.
base on that a little bit?
Yeah. And so first of all, I'm going to say that, can I ask how old you guys are?
Yeah.
30.
I'm 25.
30, 25.
Yes.
Right? So the passion that you have at 30, the passion that you have at 25 may very well change at 40 and 35, a decade from now. And just like mine certainly has. Like I wanted to be a DJ, and then I wanted to own supplements. Ironically, came full circle. Last year we started a supplement business, and it of course,
Now
has
it's
blown
been
up.
happened,
right?
right?
Yeah. That's
Exactly.
awesome.
You learn from your failures.
But you aren't going to find this one magical passion that's going to take you to the rest of your life, because you're human. You evolve. You have different desires and paths, and maybe something happens in your life. You take a tour to Greece, and you realize Greece has 26% unemployment rate, the highest in the world, and you go, oh my God, I want to move to Greece and teach them entrepreneurship. And before you know it, you're not doing podcasts anymore. You're in Greece teaching them whatever, right?
Yeah.
And something might impact you to change your path, but it's about developing your purpose and not finding it, because it's not lost. And so I always ask people, when, especially
That's
young
deep.
kids.
I love that. I love that.
Young kids will just send me a DM and they go, Bedros, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm going to college. I don't know what it is. I've changed my major 3 or 4 times. I don't know what my purpose is. I'm like, hey, listen, what do you do right now? Whatever. I work at a department store. Do you like it? No. What would you do if I paid for your whole lifestyle, paid for your food, your rent, your health insurance, travel? What would you do for free because you love it so much? And they'll immediately, I'll get an answer. Whether it's an audience, whether it's on a DM, wherever, I'll get an answer. So if I ask you, what would you do for free right now because you love it so much, you don't have to worry about money because I'm going to cover your money expenses. They'll name it. I go, there you go. Now be so good at it that people will pay you. That's it. And that's how you develop
powerful.
it. So it's like, well, I'm not good at it. Go be the best. The best ditch digger on the planet makes 6 figures. I promise you, because the best ditch digger is probably digging around a gas pipe and fiber optic lines, and so he has to be so surgical.
Yep.
Right? So it doesn't. Or the best street sweeper is probably making 6 figures because the streets that he's sweeping are so precious.
Yep.
Right? So be the best at the one skill. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You could be the best at one skill, and you will do well at it. And when your desires change, whatever your next thing is, like right now, I love Fit Body Bootcamp, our franchise, but I realized I want to help more men who have suffered through trauma. So I created this thing called The Project. It is absolutely a passion project.
Brutal.
Right? Yeah, it is brutal. And so I'm going all in, and it's going to be the best thing out there for men who want to. What took me 5 years to get over my shit, right? And to just evolve into a leader and overcome the trauma. We do it in 75 hours. Well, if we're able to do that, I got to be the best at it so the men are willing to pay and come be a part of it. And so that's it. Your passions will change over time. You just have to be good at it so that your purpose is actually the thing that also generates you income. Yeah. Because how great is that? What do they say? They say in life, if you can just find these 3 hobbies, right? Which is like a hobby that keeps you fit, a hobby that makes you money, and a hobby that gives you meaning and significance, right? Like for me, it is this. It's fitness. Like fitness makes me money, it keeps me fit, and it's like gives me significance.
Yeah, and you serve people. And I love that you mentioned the word significance. A lot of people underestimate that word. And I'm very big on words. It's really big to me because I realized I walked around life saying all these words and I didn't know the meaning of it. Just like influencer. I say attention, people think, well, attention on Facebook, and it doesn't mean that, right? So you said the word significance, and a lot of people are looking for their purpose. You speak about how when we're born, we have a book, and that our dad and moms write our story, then our teachers write our stories, and that most of us don't take the pen back, right? And just like Trent Shelton stated, you are your purpose. You just have to discover it within you. What would you say to an individual right now that hasn't taken the pen back? How do you take the pen back in your life? How do you become the narrator of your story?
Yeah. And I believe, for one, I believe every human within them has a book, like an actual book they can publish and sell. Like, because we all have such unique stories, right? Your path is so different than mine and Nina's, and everybody in here has a different path. But then there's a second book. And that second book is being written right now about each and every single one of us. And when we're born, you cannot have the pen because you're a baby. So someone's got to feed you. So they decide what you're eating. So in your book of life, they go, oh, the baby's going to eat this, and she's going to wear this, and she's going to like these colors, and we're going to buy her this stuffed animal, et cetera, et cetera. And so someone's writing in your book. But what ends up happening is then as you grow up and maybe you're a little chubby because of the stuff you ate, in my case, that's how it was, and like, oh, you're just always going to be chubby. You're never going to be athletic. That's still writing. Now they're writing into my brain, right? They're literally, and so I start believing that I'm chubby, I'm never going to be athletic, and so I grew up as a fat kid all the way throughout high school, right? Turns out actually I have pretty decent genetics. It just turns out when you don't work out and you're fed fried Armenian food all the time, you do get fat. Even the most athletic human will get fat. And so, so at some point they tell you, right, like, hey, watch out for the economy, watch out, don't travel too much. My mom, she's afraid of travel. I travel every week. I'm in airplanes all the time. What if the plane falls out of the sky? So they're always writing in your grandparents and parents and school teachers, and it's based on their experience of life. So they're projecting their fears, their experiences onto you. My dad in Armenia, when he was younger, had an older brother drown in a lake. So we come to the United States. My dad's like, you can go to the beach, never go in the ocean. I will kill you if you go in the ocean. I'm like, why? He's like, you had an uncle that drowned, the water kills. No, having a cramp, he apparently had a cramp and then he drowned. That will kill you. The ocean won't actually kill you. People surf, people hang out, they go in the water, they swim, right? So for years, I didn't go in the ocean. For years. Until like in my late 20s, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in the ocean. Right? Like, it's embarrassing to admit that, but look how long it took because someone else was writing in my book of life. So at some point you must, but then you start feeling like a victim. Well, I can't do this because of, and I can't do this because I'm fat, and because I'm dyslexic, and because they said, and because Trump's the president, and because the economy crashed, and because airplanes hit the building, and I got fired.
Like, when the fuck does
Basically,
the excuses
yeah,
stop?
basically
Like-
living in fear.
Yeah.
Without
so
taking
take
control.
the pen back and you start writing in the pages that are left, because there's only so many pages left. And at some point, if you don't write in that book, there's going to be this last state when you're in this bed and you got tubes attached to you, and it's just regret that's going to run through your mind. And that's a very sad thing to have.
Absolutely. And Bedros, how does one develop an empire builder's mindset?
Abundance. Abundance. Abundance, abundance, abundance. The only way you're going to build an empire, or at least the mindset of an empire builder, right? Like literally people in the fitness franchise industry will come to me and I'll help them build their fitness franchise. Even though I have a fitness franchise, technically they're my competitors. I believe there's just so many people out there who are overweight, overfat, don't know what to do. My competitors are not the competing gyms and franchises. It's McDonald's, it's Coca-Cola, it's
Starbucks.
Snickers, it's Starbucks, Frito-Lay, right? Those are my competitors. And so I've got this abundance mindset. And when you have an abundance mindset, you will, one, attract a lot of great people into your life.
Absolutely.
Who will help build you up. And number two, when you have an abundance mindset, no matter how bad things get, you will always see the silver lining in the cloud. And so the question then is, well, how do you develop an abundance mindset so you can be an empire builder? You have to constantly put yourself through adversarial relationships, experiences. So I started off having bad experiences. That's how we started off this whole conversation,
Yeah.
right? Started off suffering and hair wash with gasoline, dumpster diving. Today, these days, I have a pretty easy life. And I can get soft very quick. So I put myself through 6-week challenges, right? Train for 6 weeks in MMA, get in the cage and fight with an MMA fighter. Train for 6 weeks, run a marathon. And I hated running. Train, and I hate getting choked out. Train for 6 weeks, recently finished a jiu-jitsu challenge. And do these things that are uncomfortable, you will begin to get more resilient, emotionally stronger, and you will build this abundance mindset that I can do anything and achieve anything. And if I can run 26.2 miles, having never run before, after 6 weeks of training, shit, I can do anything. I can build a building. I can build an empire. So you've got to constantly challenge yourself when life, deals good things to you.
I love that. And
Yeah.
what I want to touch on, I know we don't have much time left, but I think the last couple questions, they're going to be powerful questions. So let's roll with
Sure.
them. One, you speak about taking chances. You took your kids' college funds, you bought this big ass building, and you said, I'm rich on paper, but I'm not rich right now, right? Now, I want to know, why did you make the decision that your kids aren't going to college? Because
That's important.
Yeah, I have a kid. And when you said that, I was like, damn, this guy took the college funds. And then once you said it again, you're like, and they're not going to college? I was like, okay, he's a risk taker and he knows what he wants. He's decided what he's wanted. So what is the reasoning behind that?
Well, so first I'll talk about the first piece, which is like why I did that, right?
Yeah.
I have so much confidence in myself. I wasn't a confident person. I built confidence. Ed Milet says that when you make a promise and you keep a promise to yourself, you build your confidence,
Yes.
right?
Confidence, yep.
And then my friend Tom Bilyeu says that as you keep these promises, you begin to build credibility.
Yes.
Credibility and confidence together make you unstoppable.
They go
right?
hand in hand.
Yeah, because if I say I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m., but the alarm goes off and I hit the snooze button, I just lost credibility with myself.
Yeah.
I've eroded my confidence. Therefore, I'm not trustworthy to me. So I'm like, ooh, should I do that business move? No, I don't trust myself. Because the last time I said I'm going to do something, I hit the snooze button, right? I bitched out. That's it. And so the bottom line here is, one, you got to build confidence and credibility. And now we know how. Make a promise, keep a promise to yourself and to others. Number two, why did I take my kids' college fund? Simple. Unless they're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer that requires that specialized
just said
education,
that. Yeah.
right? There's the education they're going to get in college used to be good when there was no internet.
Absolutely.
Now I can Google the answers faster and
Get a
get more modern.
certification.
Times have
Take
changed.
a course.
Yeah.
Cut your
Listen to
learning
a
curve in
podcast.
half and invest in yourself.
Right now upstairs is my 14-year-old son. My wife picks him up from school at 3 o'clock. For the next 2 hours, between 3 and 5, he works and he does customer support for us. He learns how
Wow.
to communicate, make decisions, deal with angry clients who didn't get their protein containers in time, or their protein showed up, but it was all busted up because of UPS.
Yeah.
A 14-year-old kid is problem solving, dealing with angry people. How do you think he's going to do in life? Are they going to teach him that? In a college, it's a bubble that you're in.
Yeah.
You're learning theories by professors who profess but have never practiced. He's learning real world shit
Yeah.
by a dude who's in
daily.
the trenches.
Yeah.
And he's having to deal with angry people and make them happy.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Bedros, so I need to ask you, what makes you feel alive?
Oh man, just helping people. I love helping people. I am cut from servitude, the cloth of servitude. I love serving and helping others to a fault.
I know I read that, I know you mentioned, I think it was in the interview with Ed Milet, how you say people don't appreciate life until they are able to come from another country.
Yeah.
And when you understand the flag, the stars, the colors, then you're able to
Things are a
know,
lot
take
different.
yourself out of it
Yes.
and be in service to other people.
Yes, yes.
That's
be
beautiful.
In service. My dad was like, hey, just be in service of others in this country and you will get ahead. And I think those are wise words, and I've taught that to my son. Like, he'll meet you and you'll say, oh, hey, how are you? And he'll ask you 4 questions before you can ask him the next 4.
Building a
because
rapport.
He builds rapport, exactly.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask, there's 2 exercises that you speak about in your book. I'm on chapter 5. I'm not going to lie, but it's awesome. You speak about emergency brakes.
Yes.
And you speak about the rubber band exercise.
Yeah.
Can you please kind of elaborate a little bit more on those 2 exercises itself? I just thought it was amazing, and now I'm going to start holding rubber band on my wrist.
Yeah. And by the way,
Look at that right there. Exactly.
it's just enough pain to remind you.
Yeah.
Well, so I'll start with the rubber band thing first, right? Whether it's one of these or rubber band, doesn't matter. But we have 47,000 thoughts a day. I don't know if you know that or not. 47,000 thoughts a day. 82% of those are negative. Here's, people go, ooh, how does that happen? Where does it come from? Let me explain. Let's say tonight I plan on waking up at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. But I hit the snooze button, right? I lied to myself. I broke a promise. I'm going to have a lot of thoughts. The subconscious mind is going to be like, dude, you're a promise breaker. You were supposed to not hit snooze, and you hit snooze, which means you missed your workout, and you missed your workout. So now you're weak. And because you're weak, you already messed that up. You're probably going to eat dirty. Like, look at all the negative self-talk that happens. Like, the best conversations that happen right here.
Yeah.
47,000 conversations or
Whispers
thoughts.
we tell ourselves.
Yep. And so if that conversation is negative, the best thing you can do is very quickly snap yourself and you will be fine. It's a reminder. It's just an association that when I snap myself, now I'm going to say something positive about myself.
Like a trigger, like
Yeah.
Ed Milet talks about.
And in the book I talk about, what do I say? I like myself. I like myself.
Your
I like
mantra,
myself.
man
Yeah.
up, but
Yeah.
in
Yep.
terms it's human up. And I
Exactly.
love that.
And so that's where the rubber band comes from. You are conditioning yourself that every time you're poo-pooing on yourself, snap yourself, and you will take yourself out of negative thought and put yourself into a positive place. The other thing, the e-brake, right? Most of us travel through life with the training wheels on, bubble wrapped, with the e-brake just slightly engaged.
Yeah.
Have you ever driven your car with the e-brake accidentally slightly engaged?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
it's like-
I had a stick shift car, so I
There you go.
know how it
right?
is.
So it's not driving right. And you're like, what's going on with my car? And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I got the e-brake on. You drop the e-brake and the car drives fine. We drive through life with the e-brake slightly engaged because we don't want to offend people. I don't want to come off as like a needy person. I don't want to come off like a control freak.
You play it safe.
We play it safe.
Fear.
Like, take out the bubble wrap, take off the training wheels, drop the e-brakes, go all in. You only have 100 years on this planet. And those 100 years, if you play it right, you'll have 100 years, will go by quick. I'm 45. I'm almost at that midpoint, right? And I'm like, man, I wish I can get another 45, and on top of that, another 45 years, because I got so much shit to do. Drop that e-brake and go all in on everything.
Learn from your failures and your experiences.
Bingo.
Man.
So out of all the accomplishments that you've accomplished, from Fit Body Boot Camp to the Empire Mastermind Group, how do you intend to leave a legacy? And what is next for you?
So my legacy is my 2 little kids, Andrew and Chloe. I think anyone who has children, I think you said you have a daughter?
Yeah, little girl.
Right? We have an obligation, anyone who's got kids, to leave our kids in a better state than we were. Like, my dad put me in a better state than he was.
Yeah, to be an example.
Right.
So generational wealth in a way?
Yeah, exactly. Generational wealth. Because now if I have 2 kids, Andrew and Chloe, who can be better servants to this planet, and if they each have 2 kids or 3 kids and they have that obligation, so that's the legacy I'm leaving behind, I want to leave behind. And I've got a great wife who helps me mold 2 amazing children. And I'm grateful for that. What was the other question?
Well, I think that was that
the
question.
Yeah.
That was it.
And just to kind of wrap it up, I have 2 last questions for you. It's fighter jet, crop duster,
Yeah.
right? And you talk about it many times with everything, and you just said it right now. You want to be an example. You had an anxiety attack that you felt like it was a heart attack. And the one thing that stuck out to me was, what man is going to raise my kid? What guy is going to walk down the aisle and and walk my daughter down the aisle? And I think that's so powerful in a way, because it's like, what example am I setting for my kids? So if I'm not here, they're looking for a replication of me.
Yeah.
Now, with your kids, do you feel like you're teaching them to kind of be open with who they are and not hide those silent battles? Because for me, my mom made me such a strong woman, but I also never wanted to let her down. You being a parent and going through what you've gone through, I've gone through molestation, I've gone through a lot. I want to be as open with my daughter so she doesn't hide those silent
That's
battles.
exactly it. And I say be as open as possible. And we, you know, my daughter, she's not going to see this because she's 12 years old, so I'm going to tell you guys. But she's right on the verge of having her period.
Yeah.
Right? And so yesterday I come home and we've got such an open relationship with
Probably
the wife and
emotional as
kids.
hell.
Right? And my wife was telling me, she's like, right on the verge. I'm like, Chloe, I hear you're right on the verge. I'm like, I can't wait. As soon as you have your period, we're going to Yogurtland. We're going to celebrate. She's like, oh, Dad, keep it
All
down.
embarrassed, right?
Yeah, she goes, Andrew's going to hear. I'm like, but who cares? Let Andrew hear. He gets yogurt out of it too. We're going to Yogurtland. We're going to celebrate your period. Could you
Celebration
imagine?
for all.
Because the things that are taboo, if you openly talk about it, and my kids know what happened to me, and I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm not a victim. It happened. 2 older boys did it. I was the victim, and they were the perpetrators, and it wasn't my fault. But this is what happened to me. So you guys got to be safe, but don't try and live in a bubble wrap life. But we talk about the things that are taboo because, and by the way, we go out, and if my wife's drinking wine, they'll taste the wine. If I'm drinking beer, they'll taste the beer. They're never going to grow up and be like, I'm going to go sit in the
Like
car
they're
with my
afraid.
friends and drink
try
a
it
six-pack
out.
and get hammered.
Man, I love that.
They know what it's like to taste it. We don't like it. I'm like, well, drink enough till you feel a buzz. Because I'd rather you feel it with me at this dinner table.
Yeah.
You know, all right. So when their friends are like, oh, this is taboo. No, it's not.
Yeah.
I've tasted different wines,
the norm.
beers, vodka. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And they know that. And we teach them, hey, just so you know, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it here with us.
Wow.
And so I'm only talking about anything and everything because I wasn't talking about anything. I didn't know where
Exactly.
Vegas came from.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
And so it's all taboo, so then you are curious.
And that's what
sometimes
makes you
curiosity
curious, and
gets
then you
in
go
trouble.
try it out, and then
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I think I'm doing
Yeah.
it wrong because I'm drunk with my friends,
Right.
or I'm doing this mistake. So I love that. I really love that as a parent advice. And just to close it off, man, this was awesome. Where can our listeners find more of you, and what are you up to that people should be looking out for?
So the thing I'm up to more is I just want to help the society. So whether it's through the project or Fit Body Bootcamp or the Empire Mastermind or Truly in our supplement brand, if it involves helping humans like better themselves, that's what I'm all about. And so they can find me on Instagram. I'm very fanatical about being on Instagram, and I'm very active on that. And then if they want to learn more about my book, they just go to manup.com.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for having us here. I know Jay.
Absolutely. It is a true
Thank
honor.
you.
I'm
I
very
appreciate
humbled
it.
by your story, and thank you again for inviting us here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and anybody that's watching this, all I have to say is make sure you run all of this back because this was amazing. We really deep dive into a real perception, not a facetious perception. We really dug deep, not a surface bullshit. And you guys know what I always say. Let's go, let's grow, and then you'll watch the money flow.